All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores and welcome all members who are here in the council chambers and those joining remotely this evening. And of course, welcome everyone who's watching by the live stream this evening. We're glad that you're with us. The second item on our agenda is the land acknowledgement, and this evening we'll turn it over to Councillor Mayette, who will deliver the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen, the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today, who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land, and we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for their contributions that they have made, both caring and to the land in which and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation. We acknowledge the truth about what happened to the Indigenous peoples because of colonization and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path of healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to disclosure of pecuniary interest. I'll ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. We have no open forum requests. So we're on to delegations, and we do have 3 delegations this evening. And I'll just, before we bring the first one in, just remind all delegations that we have 10 minutes allotted for each of our delegations this evening. And council does have a very heavy agenda this evening. So I'll ask each of our delegations to just pay careful attention to that time limit. We'd really appreciate if you could come in at or under that timeline. So with that, I will bring in our first delegation. It is from United Housing for All, and we have Herb Schmidt, John Van Bastelar, June Van Bastelar, and Susan Brown, and they're here to talk to us about homelessness in Saugeen Shores. So we'll bring those folks in. See Susan there. Good evening, Susan. Are you getting the delegation started for us?
No, actually, I'm not. So
okay, we have others must be coming in. We'll just wait.
Must be.
Oh, there's Herb. Evening, Herb.
Good evening.
Yes, we're just waiting for John and June.
Mayor Charbonneau, I don't see them on the video anymore.
Okay. Are you starting this for us, Herb? Maybe they'll come in as we get going.
Yeah, I could just start it off a little bit on speak on their behalf. So we are part of a United Housing for All. We over the last I've just actually been a recent member. I started about in September, and within a couple of meetings we had a discussion on the issue of homelessness, and we decided to form a subgroup within the team to look specifically at the issue of homelessness. And through that, we've learned a lot. I don't want to, I'll continue a little bit of what I know that John and June would share. We wanted to open them with them because they've had a lot of personal experience with dealing with people who are who they've encountered as being homeless. Both John and June work fairly regularly at the food bank in town, and I've heard of stories where people have come in and surprisingly asked for a tent. They've encountered a number of people, who are homeless. I know that John has consulted with the police department, and there's been a benevolent fund that was started through the Southampton Rotary Club, I believe, and that's been, that's been a help. They haven't as of yet, really tracked how many. I know that June has said that she has requested that, and they will start tracking how many people are actually homeless to get a better picture of that. I think overall, we're going to say that the issue of homelessness is not a very visible one in the town. You can go into some of the bigger cities, you can see obvious signs of homelessness, people on the street. Here it's hidden. And I think that's kind of what I want to say as a bit of an introduction. I don't remember everything that John and Jim were going to say, but I'm just going to pass it over to Susan now to continue on.
Thanks, Herb. Good evening, everyone. My name's Susan Brown, and I'm going to share with you some of the data that this committee has collected based on our guiding question, which is there homelessness in Saugeen Shores, and if so, to what extent? The first thing that became quite clear to us when we started to investigate this issue was that current reliable data on homelessness is quite challenging to collect for a couple of reasons. When you're collecting data on homelessness, experts caution that they have identified, for lack of a better word, two types of homelessness. Visible homelessness data is based on those who are experiencing homelessness and accessing services. So those, for example, that are staying in shelters. But unfortunately, visible homelessness, which is the easier of the two types to track, only accounts for roughly 20% of all homelessness in Ontario. The other 80% of homelessness is termed as hidden homelessness. And hidden homelessness can be folks who are sleeping rough, sleeping in abandoned buildings, encampments, vehicles, or possibly even couch surfing, sleeping on friends or families' couches. So it's really difficult to gather a lot of reliable data on hidden homelessness. A report by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in 2019 noted that on any given night, approximately 9,600 Ontarians experience visible homelessness. So I'll let that sink in for a minute. That's almost 10,000 Ontarians, and that is only visible homelessness. That is not accounting for the other 80%. Who are experiencing the hidden type of homelessness. And those numbers came from a pre-COVID survey. So since the pandemic, those numbers have gotten worse. Last week, our group was able to have Caitlin Curry, who is the homelessness response supervisor for Grey and Bruce counties, present to us. She was able to share with us some of the data for our particular region. As of last Monday, there was 223 households in Grey and Bruce counties that were experiencing homelessness that they knew of. Those were people who had accessed services or accessed the system at some point. And keep in mind that a household can mean a single individual, a couple, or a family. So that's 223 households. She also explained to us that in Bruce County, the YMCA administers the emergency shelter program for our homeless citizens. And neither Grey or Bruce counties actually has a homeless shelter, but rather local motels are used for shelters, which was something that most of our committee was unaware of. Bruce County currently has 950 people on the wait list for supportive housing, and Saugeen Shores has the highest number of individuals on that, of all the municipalities on that list. So as you can see, the data indicates that homelessness is indeed a problem in Bruce County. And as John and June and Herb will speak to a little bit more through conversations with the food bank and the local police department, we do know that some of those people that are experiencing homelessness are right here in Saugeen Shores, and we hope to be able to get more definitive numbers as we move forward. So I will perhaps pass this on to John and June now.
Thank you very much, Susan. Sorry for our technical difficulties, but I'm not sure what Herb said at the very beginning. But basically, June and I have been involved with the food bank for over 10 years. and June will talk about that. But I want to relate my experience with the police services, our wonderful men in blue. The Saugeen, the Southampton Rotary Club started a contingency benevolent fund a couple of years ago with the police force, and that fund has enabled us to deal with homelessness at the present time when it's needed. At 2 a.m, it's hard to deliver solutions. Now this gives the chief the opportunity to work with individuals and help individuals at night, in the middle of the night, and deal with the situation when people are back to work during the day. So that was a big step forward. And my experience being on the task force on housing, it really showed that there's a big spectrum when you talk about housing needs. It's not just about affordability or attainability, but it's also about homelessness. So there's a wide spectrum involved. And as we are a subcommittee of the United Housing for All, we are just looking at how does Saugeen Shores get involved in the future with homelessness. So I'm working with the police, and June will now talk a bit about the food bank.
Yes, as John said, we've been probably about 10 years helping with the food bank, and we do encounter homeless people on a one-to-one basis. And sometimes they share with us maybe more than we want to know, but we have examples of people, as Susan said, telling us they're living in a truck. They slept outside all last winter. They've asked us for it. We've had a couple ask us for tents. And so we're very aware that there are also people that are multiple people in one apartment, for example, when we deliver food. So we try to pass them along to other services. That's all that we can do. We're just dealing with the food part of it. However, it would break your heart to meet some of these people. One young woman came in with only the clothes on her back. No food, no place to stay. Now we did make sure that she got in contact with the right resources. She did get a motel room, but she was looking for winter pants and coats because she was going to be living outside again this winter. So that just gives you like one example. And I asked at the food bank when we were there last week, we've got temporary staff right now, but in the last couple of weeks, they identified about 6 people that they know of who are homeless. So that just gives you some idea. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do the closing part of it. In a relatively short time, we have read reports, listened to podcasts, listened to meetings from other municipalities, and most importantly, also talk to people who are more in the know than we are. And if anyone on council is interested in a list of the links to the preferences, please email and I'd be glad to provide that. One of the things, the cost of living in Saugeen Shores, it was published, I think just recently by the Ontario Living Wage Network and communicated also through the Grey Bruce United Way. The cost of living, the living wage is $20.70. Many in town here are working well below that living wage. I put in my the report there the rental costs for a 1-unit bedroom apartment is $1,200, and I was told by people who are more knowledgeable than I had that's actually a bargain. The rates are actually much higher, and also there's minimal subsidies for those who are in need and cannot work. Many simply cannot afford a shelter, and if no options are available, become homeless. I also had a chance to sit down with the police chief Kevin Zettel last week. He confirmed that homelessness exists here, but police are supporting and helping, and that's encouraging. I was also glad to hear that his view is that it's not a crisis here, although it is in other municipalities in the province. I think we have some time to work this through and do what is right for our town. We are suggesting that a town committee be formed on poverty and homelessness. This issue is a broad issue. It will require cooperative effort between the town, support groups, service providers. we strongly suggest that if possible, to have a person who is or has experienced homelessness be part of this. A key part is to include those who know and understand what they need instead of the rest of us imposing solutions on them and what we think they need. We offer to work with the town in coming up with terms of reference for a committee and can come back to town with a follow-up presentation once we have a better data and information on this issue. I just want to close on a personal reflection. I came here 10 years ago to work as an engineering manager at Bruce Power. For the longest time, I didn't know if we had a food bank or even why we would have a food bank here. Why do we even need it? I was wrong. But I do wonder if there are others in town who might not be aware and might think the same way I did. The people in this town have stepped up in the past towards a cause. Give the example of Heinz Craft Play, the Lamont Sports Park. We welcome the Syrians. We recently welcomed the Ukrainians as well. I think to make this work, we need to have people be aware and engaged to do what they can do to help. We're not asking that this be the government resolve this issue. It involves all of us. And I'm speaking to myself on this, challenging myself to see what I can do to help. Thank you. We are open to any questions.
Sure. Thank you all for coming in this evening. I'll just ask if there are questions from members, the Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, June, John, Herb, and Susan for the presentation. Is it a group that you're looking for more people to get involved with? United Housing for All, is there a way that people that are interested in the topic can reach out and become part of your team?
Yes, we're certainly open to people being part of it. We have had a number of people step up lately and be part of that as well. Yeah.
How do they do that? Who's the contact?
The lead on this is Mark Habits, and he's presented to council in the past. So if they can get in contact with Mark, I think we got his email as well, or
You can certainly share that information with council and we'll have it.
Sure.
Anything further, the Deputy Mayor? Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks to Susan and Herb and John and June for this presentation. Remember when they were first here and I said, come back often, and you're back now and you're looking for solutions to this problem. You're certainly not telling any tales out of school, but you're right. If we don't see the homelessness, then it doesn't exist. And we have to change that picture. And I've got in my notes, any solution needs to be a 3-level government solution. And I was talking to the mayor this afternoon, and he said, Bruce County is leading the way in trying to solve this problem. And so, Mr. Mayor, I would ask you if you could fill us in on what Bruce County is doing.
Yeah, sure, Ken. And yeah, I think some of it's been referenced already by Susan in her comments, talking about the partnership between the county and 211 and the YMCA. So, of course, just back up a little bit, the county really is the lead agency on addressing homelessness in Saugeen Shores and across the county. And the Housing Services Division at the county provides direct support for folks experiencing homelessness. So they do have an agreement with 211 and the IMC and the YMCA, which allows people to help access shelter and support for long-term housing. And as you said, the YMCA's shelter service uses local hotels. We also have now at the county what's something called the by name list, which is actually an effort to enumerate all of the folks who are experiencing homelessness in the county. I appreciate, and I think you're right, that there's a hidden element to homelessness, and there probably always will be, but there is an earnest effort from the county to find folks who are experiencing homelessness, get them on that list, and then to prioritize them for Bruce County housing. So the policy at the county now is that 1 in 10 offers Bruce County housing have to be to people who are on the by name list. Of course, there's several other programs to try to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. So things like the municipal housing allowance, which is a rent subsidy, the housing stability fund, which is assists people with rental arrears and utility arrears to try to prevent them from being evicted. And probably the most important thing, and actually it goes most to what you guys are asking for this evening, which is a process to talk about the future, is the county's housing and homelessness plan, which we have one in place. It goes till the current one ends in 2023. And so it's perfect timing, actually, because the county is going to be revisiting the plan in 2023. They're currently doing a housing demographic study to lead into that plan. And then later on next year, there's going to be public consultations to start to develop the new plan. And I think that that's would be a great place for United Housing for All, for you folks and for this council and for the town to become involved, to offer input to the county on how to address housing or homelessness in the years to come. So I think, and there's going to be more to come from the county on that and how that public consultation is going to work. So yeah, I mean, I think the town can play a really strong supportive role to the county, but the county really does have the resources and the tools at its disposal to address homelessness and is already working heavily on that. And I think we can help a lot from our level, starting by being part of this upcoming plan. Further comments, Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Herb and Susan and June and John. And I attend the housing United Housing meetings, of course, and it's a great group. And Mark Havitz and your entire group you do a wonderful job and bring to light, a situation that some of us just were not aware of. When I chaired the Affordable Housing Task Force, I learned of people sleeping on cots and behind Walmart, and I spotted a person out at Lamont Sports Park at the north end with a tent living there, for the fall and winter. And it just it's hard to look at. It's hard to see. It's something I really realized was that prominent in our community, but it is out there. And June, at the meetings I've attended with the United Housing Committee, you brought that to light and have done a really good job bringing it to the forefront. And so keep going. It is a problem out there, a bigger problem that any of us realize. And so I just think that your suggestion about the poverty and homelessness ad hoc committee, I think is something we need to at least consider. That's what one of the requests is this evening. And Mr. Mayor, I hope that we at least take a look at it at the striking committee or staff level, and perhaps meet with this group just to talk about, what's the best path forward. Is it a ad hoc committee of council? Is it a community group perhaps only? But I think it's something certainly needs to be pursued. So thank you, June and John and Herb and Susan for bringing this to our attention. And I've seen it firsthand myself, not as close as you have, June, but I've seen it. So needs to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for a really powerful presentation. I've got a couple of questions that maybe the first one would be to John. The benevolence fund that you spoke about, which is a really great program. If members of the public would like to donate to that, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, we have set it up through the treasury and your in Saugeen Shores. If you write a check to the payee is a town of Saugeen Shores, and then put in the memo for the police contingency fund, and then that will go into our account. And it has been a wonderful benefit to our town and the police, because the police aren't necessarily enforcement officers. They're also social workers who can help people out. So it's been wonderful.
Okay. And I wonder if that's something that might be, is that on the town's website, or like if people wanted to do an e-transfer instead of a check, or
I'm not
maybe
certain. but
something we could
We
look
can
at.
certainly get that answer for you.
Okay. A couple of another question, and that's about raising the question of what happens to these folks now that we're in winter and we're facing cold and the the storms. Is there any possibility for us? What, I mean, what happens on a night like that? Do we have the police going out looking for people? Do we have any options to provide any kind of warming centers? I think it's
That's a good
especially
question.
now the police used to be able to at least take them over to Tim Hortons and they could go in and have a warm meal and a coffee, but they're not even open anymore. So is.
In my discussion with Chief Settle last week, that was particularly a concern with him. And it's kind of the issues that you raised. Used to be able to, and often they give Tim Hortons cards and allow them to go to Tim Hortons, and it's not meant for long term, but it is kind of a warming place. Unfortunately, there is really no places to warm up. One thing was saying, well, you can go to the arenas, but they close down at 11 o'clock. That is something that in my discussion with him, he viewed as a priority, get warming centers in town. I think right now what the police do is they through the benevolence funds, they put them up in hotels, and that's fortunately is available now, but that is kind of the only thing they have right now.
I think it's very important to highlight, though, that there is the service through the YMCA. Folks should, if folks know somebody who's experiencing homeless or are homeless themselves, they need to call 211, be put in touch with the YMCA. And if you're in a situation where you need shelter or you could freeze to death, they will find a place for you to and put you inside, and then they'll help you to try to get into more permanent housing. So that's the police maybe isn't the first, shouldn't be the first call, right? I think that we do have a service in Bruce County through the YMCA. Just call 211, and I would really I just say it over and over again because people really need to know that 211 I think is an known and underutilized service, and it's there to help people just in a situation like that. Sorry, Councillor Grace, did you have anything?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thanks to the delegation for bringing this issue to the forefront once again. It's important that we keep talking about it. Through the work that I do, actually, Councillor Stack and I both sit on the United Way Board of Directors, United Way of Bruce and Gray, and our executive director, Francesca Dobbin, is probably, if not the most knowledgeable, one of the most knowledgeable people of the services and the way to remedy these situations that anybody in the two county area. And she is in touch with all the agencies from the Red Cross to the YMCA. We directly fund the 211 program, which is, as the mayor points out, the key to accessing these services. And if you don't know about that, you should look into what the 211 does. And not to take away from the benevolent fund that is in Saugeen Shores, that's a great thing, but really the best and most direct way, if you want to contribute, is to contribute to the United Way, because those funds are directed out to the agencies that need them the most. And as the chair of the United Way board, one of the things that I fortunately or unfortunately get to do is to be a check signatory. So every month I get to sign the checks to the people who are getting winter warmth assistance, and to buy winter coats, and to buy sleeping bags, and to buy boots for people who are living around the margin. And it's shocking. Every time I do, I go through those applications and I see where the people are living and where they're from, and a little bit of the background of their situation and how they find themselves in those situations. And most often it has some link to mental health or addictions, unfortunately. And there is action taking place to coordinate some of those things, because most of the people are in those situations and they follow a similar path to get them to that situation. And there's a group called the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, who the police, as my former position on the Police Services Board, I was a member of that committee, but it had the representatives from all of the agencies as well represented there, including the counties. And they really try and attack the root causes of people getting down this trail of homelessness. So it's a very important group that's working towards ending this cycle. But just as a shameless plug, if you do want to donate now is the United Way website. And in Saugeen Shores, My wife Melinda, along with Christine Mitchell from the Chamber of Commerce, are co-chairing a event they're calling the Coldest Night of the Year. And it's on February the 25th of 2023. And it's a fundraiser. It's essentially a walkathon. It's a 5-kilometer walk on a cold night in Saugeen Shores to give people a bit of appreciation of what it's like to be out in the cold. And their goal, their very modest goal, is to raise $20,000. I think that with a bit of effort and a bit of push, especially with somebody like Christine Mitchell at Chamber, she's a real goer. I think that's easily surpassable, and I would like to see them raise $30,000 or $40,000, and that goes directly to the United Way. And those are undesignated dollars that gives the board and gives Francesca the flexibility to apply the money where it's most needed. And this is an area where it is, in fact, most needed. So thanks again to the four of you for keeping this at the forefront in our community. And I encourage anybody listening to consider your donation to the United Way, because this has been a tough year. The United Way for 2022 has been tough. The donations are down. People are suffering with hard times. The inflation and the interest rates and the economy, we're down about 20% to our year over year. So it's important to keep these things in the forefront, and where you can, and it's been pointed out already tonight that Saugeen Shores has the ability and has the reputation of always stepping up when it's needed. So it's Christmas time and it's a time to give, and I encourage you to do so. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. So we have had a good discussion on this, and we'll probably have to move on as we're running out of time, but I see June's hand up, so we'll give her the last word. June.
I just want to say that I agree with everything that's being said, but these are temporary solutions, and housing for all should be a human right. So housing somebody, we know people who have been living in a hotel for 2 or 3 years, hotel room. Yes, they have some shelter, but that's we need to be talking about housing for all, including our homeless people. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
No, you're certainly preaching to the converted here. I don't think you'll find anybody around this table who disagree that we need more housing for everybody in our community. So thank you guys for coming in, and it was worth a half-hour discussion this evening. I'm glad we had it, and I thank you guys for kicking it off for us. So thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to 5.2.
Mr. Mayor, could I just,
Yeah, sorry, John.
for a second, to the group that's there, and as you heard Mayor Charbonneau say, the Bruce County will be looking for input on how these problems can be solved. In June, the one you bring up is a long-term one, and you might want to throw out the phrase tiny homes and
Yeah.
And let see where Bruce County comes from that.
Mhm.
If we could find the place to put tiny homes and get people in them, it could solve a lot of the problems the following winter. I just leave it at that. Okay?
I think it certainly opens up a whole other area of discussion, which I'm sure we'll carry on with, but I would encourage you though, to consider making a delegation to Bruce County Council, a similar one to the one you made this evening, because they certainly are more in the driver's seat on these issues than we are. And I know, being a member of council, they'd be keen to hear from you. So thank you once again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on then to 5.2, which is a delegation from Doug Longmire, and he's here to talk to us about traffic concerns. So bring in Mr. Longmire.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine, Doug. Take it away.
Okay, got no problems here, but I'd first like to welcome all the new counselors to aboard, and personally thank you, Luke, for talking to your operations manager and have the town employees come to a stop at the problem areas, and so that then I'd like to discuss. And let me see here. I'll just get my notes out. I've done some personal studying last summer, and I spent 3 hours, and I counted as many as 25 cars refusing to come to a stop sign, with only 5 of them actually stopping. And I'm not trying to discourage the improvements the town made to the bump with the bump outs in. I just think they're a bit of a distraction, especially if you had noticed my pictures of some of the plants and the parking uptown. It's impossible to see the stop signs in some situations. I also had a meeting with Bruce Martin, to chat with him one time, and he informed me that it was a police matter about police, and I can understand that. Yeah, it is technically a police department problem with no people stopping at the stop signs. But I tried to inform him that it was a problem that had not occurred until after the fact the bump outs were in. Now, if you wanted to make it safer for people to cross, I think there could have been a little more studying on other situations other than put those current permanent ones in. Like, I personally enjoyed the blue paint jobs at that one corner, because they also had 4 steel posts to prevent people from parking where they shouldn't, so nobody could see. I'd like to know if, say, even if the town employees were consulted about that, because I watched the town employees trying to do the snow removal, and I'm sure your budget for that must have increased because it made their job twice as hard as it was before. Like I was, when they first come up with the meeting there, 2014 with this idea, I did go to the one town hall meeting where they had architect drawings, but no one would answer my questions about why or what they were for. And I'm also very disappointed in their former infrastructure, Amanda Frost, who I talked to her several times about trying to find somebody to do a study to just see if they are or are not safe. And as a pedestrian riding around on my scooter 10, 12 hours a day, I see all sorts of people just doing rolling stops at all the stop signs, which I'll mention to Chief Settle about trying to find some solution for that. That's basically all I got to say. I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longmire. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Doug, for the presentation. I know you've got extensive personal experience as someone who has a daily close-up view of our streets and sidewalks in not just Southampton, but Port Elgin, and you have a valuable personal perspective on the needs, on accessibility needs. I think you're probably, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Southampton BIA has had a streetscapes committee that has been in effect for over a year. I've been attending those meetings. Councillor Davinsky, of course, has been attending those meetings as well. And the Southampton BIA is working hard on a streetscape plan, and part of their plan is going to be extensive public consultation. So
That's great to hear, because I was at the last BIA meeting here in Southampton. I was misled by somebody from the BIA stating I was not allowed to ask any questions or give any information. And then 2 days later, same person told me I was misinformed. So I have concerns about the way the BIA is running things.
Why don't we just let Councillor Grace finish her comments and
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Grace. Yeah.
Carry on, Councillor Grace.
No problem. I was just going to say, I know that the BIA has specific plans for this process. And that's going to be happening over the next 6 months or so. And we'll be culminating with, I think their plan is a public meeting sometime in May. So I'm sure they'll be publicizing that and welcome your thoughts and ideas. Thanks, Doc.
Okay, are there further comments? We'll get the deputy mayor, then Mayette, then Davinsky.
Thank you. And through you, thanks Doug for the presentation. Like you, I share your concern about people not stopping in the right location where there are some curb extensions in downtown Southampton. And you and I have talked about that a few times over the last couple of years. The report or the delegation notes that we had access to, you're picking up on ideas that I know are part of the idea behind curb extensions, bump outs. Curb extensions are what I call them. If they're installed properly, they do give pedestrians and people on scooters a safe pad to be out, to be visible, but also for them to be able to see cars coming. So it works when they're installed properly. And I think that we missed an opportunity by only doing 2 corners and not all 4. So as Councillor Grace suggested, the BIA's new idea for a streetscape, I really hope that we do 1 corner completely so that we can really understand how they really will work. They require, though, that people stop where they're supposed to stop. But if they're installed on all 4 corners of an intersection, I think it matches what you're looking for, which is a safe place for pedestrians or people on the sidewalk and in scooters or on scooters, and for them to be visible, but for them to also be able to see what's on the road. And so in many ways, I think we're on the same page, but thank you very much for the presentation tonight, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Doug, for your presentation. Doug, just looking at your pictures there, and I'm trying to see the one where you've got the corner and the pickup trucks there. You're trying to demonstrate that the pickup trucks block the view around the corner. Is that what I'm seeing there?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. And it's actually not very often that I get to Southampton, but I see you've got a picture of my truck there. I presume that's just coincidental that you
Just
were
coincidental.
waiting for me on the corner, were you?
Yeah.
No, but I see what you mean though, Doug, in that picture where there is no bump out, the person would have to get significantly out into the intersection before they could see, especially somebody who's maybe sitting on a scooter, to see whether it was safe to cross or not. And as the deputy mayor pointed out, if there was a bump out there, like on the other couple of corners, then you'd have a safe passage to get you to the point where you could see around the big trucks like mine in the picture there. Thank you, Doug.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Doug. Good evening, Doug. Thank you for the presentation. I'm on record as not being a fan of bump outs, but I believe the deputy mayor when she says if it was on all 4 corners, there's a chance of this working. There would still need to be education of people to come to a complete stop. And perhaps that's a police issue that needs to be dealt with. But I think I would like to see all 4 corners, as Deputy Mayor Huber has suggested, and see where that goes. It could work and it may solve our problems. Do I want more permanent bump outs? No, but I'm just one person, and we'll see what happens with the streetscape program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments from members? I would just say, and I thank you as well, Doug, for taking the time to come in, and certainly know that you care a lot about this issue and you've looked into it a lot. And I think the question of having bump outs on 4 corners, of course, that was the plan years ago. That was what we were going to do. And then we stopped because the community was concerned about the approach we were going, and so we're redoing that process with the BIA, and they're reaching, I hope they're reaching nearly the conclusion of their streetscape work with some public consultation to come. Hopefully we'll get that work done, and then we can start to roll out a complete streetscape revitalization in Southampton from the lake all the way up to Victoria Street. And I think that once we've done that and it's complete and it's comprehensive, it'll be solid and safe. And so that's the point we need to get to. We need to finish
Yeah,
the revitalization
agree.
of Main Street. And so I'm hoping we can get there sooner than later. But I want to thank you for coming in, Doug, and certainly encourage you to participate in that process.
I certainly will. And thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, that's great. Well, you have a good night, Doug. We'll see you again.
Yep. You bet. Take care.
Okay, so now we're on to our third delegation, which is from Sarah Porter, who is the chair of the Southampton BIA. And she's here to talk to us about the Board of Management. Ms. Porter, the floor is yours.
Hello. So my name is Sarah Porter. I have recently accepted the position of Southampton BIA Chair, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to address the council this evening. As you know, we recently went through our own board elections and we had quite a turnover. So I'd like to take this opportunity to quickly introduce the new board, although you will receive their full bios. So myself, Chair, owner of Remind Wellness, General Store and Spa. Jairus Edwards is the Vice Chair and Governance. He is the General Manager of the Beach Motel. Janine King is our Treasurer Administrative Coordinator from Family Enterprises. Jeff Cody, Membership Committee Chair, owner of Refresh Smoothies, Juice and More. Paul Schendel is our Events and Promotions Committee Chair, owner of 173 High Street. And Kendall Sawyer is our Streetscape Committee Chair, owner of Sona's Hair and Aesthetics. Lisa Mills is our coordinator and has been integral in the past board, and we are fortunate to have her staying with us. And our lovely council member, John Davinsky, who we are lucky enough to also have staying with us. Like I said, you'll receive their full bios tonight, but I'd like to speak to you about what we have briefly discussed as our hope for the coming year. Building on the past, we are looking to have more events and promotions, bringing in some shoulder season events and increases to our businesses. Advancing our streetscape concept, which is a hot topic, is something we hope you'll see prior to your 2024 financial planning. We are also interested in discussing raising our BIA levies, as our financials will show the need for increases, as well as the fact that the Southampton BIA has one of the lowest levies of all of BIAs of similar size and demographics, with seasonal tourism similar to ours. As a town who has one of the most beautiful downtown views with stunning sunsets and incredible services, stores, restaurants, and accommodations, the ability for the BIA to support its members outside of the 3 months we rely on is integral to our success and survival. Levies give us that ability. Bringing in associate memberships, as we have seen at home businesses and B&Bs growing in Southampton, and BIA After Hours in Southampton saw many changes in businesses since our lost years of 2020 and 2021, when many people didn't go out and do personal activities. These after hours activities will allow us to get to know each other better in more personal ways. Businesses build BIAs, but people build businesses. So it's important that we get out there and meet people and meet each other. And we would, of course, welcome you to join us at all of these events. Talking about the future is a great time to thank the past, and I'd like to thank our board members that have retired or didn't seek re-election as their personal and business lives grow: Justin Nicklaus, Bruce Martin, and Chris Robinson. And with that, thank you for your time. And on behalf of the new SBIA board, we look forward to representing Southampton businesses and working with the town, the chamber, and Port Elgin's BIs to try to make Southampton and Saugeen Shores even more of a destination all year round.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. And just before I turn it over to council, I want to congratulate you on becoming chair of the BIA and congratulate the rest of your board. And thank you for your willingness to serve in that role. It's a volunteer role and a big one. So we certainly appreciate you taking on that job. And I'll turn it over to the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations, Sarah, as well on the opening of your new business. It was a pleasure to be there Thursday night for your grand opening.
Yeah, thank you.
And nice to have you on that side of the street as well. I had 2 questions for you and then one for maybe either Sarah, the CAO, or the Director of Strategic Initiative. The comment or question to you, Sarah, is I believe you have 2 more nights of horse and carriage rides downtown. That's all through the BIA. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Friday nights, so this coming Friday night and the following Friday night?
Let me pull it up. So it's
I can say that it is correct.
yeah, that's correct, John.
Starting at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, it starts at 4 and goes until 8, and people can sign up at Fun.
And I wanted to ask you to explain a little more about how the associate membership situation has sort of been unfolding and how somebody would tap into that if they have one of those businesses that is not currently involved with the BIA.
Absolutely. So this is something that has been talked about for quite a while, and we're putting into place now. So we've built it off of other BIA's platform. And basically anyone that owns or runs a business that isn't included in the BI can purchase their associate membership for $150. And that gets them the exact same rights with the exception of voting. So we'll advertise, we'll promote their businesses, include them in events, all of those things, but they just can't vote on our voting options. So we chose 150 as the base because that is the smallest levy that we get from businesses. So they would just come in at the same level there.
Thank you, Sarah. My question to someone from the town is the deputation made a request related to consideration for increasing the levy. What would be the process to have the discussion, and how would you go about engaging the business community in that option?
We'll turn that to the clerk. She'll have the answer.
Thank you for you, Mayor Charbonneau. The levy for a BIA is governed through the Municipal Act. So I would prefer, if it is okay with council, for us to provide a report back. At that point in time, I believe discussions with the CFO/treasurer would be in order before we would make any recommendations for that to council.
Well, thank you. And so Sarah, there you have a response that watch the future council agenda for some additional comments that will be of interest to your group. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, just a comment more than anything. With Sarah at the helm and the BIA Board of Management that we have now, I'm a great believer in this group. And I think we're going to do great things for downtown Southampton. Mr. Mayor, you and I have talked about this before and said, well, we tried once before and it didn't work. Well, strap in because it's going to work this time. And we are looking forward to it. I've already told the Board of Management that they have to do it before my term ends, or I will haunt them for the rest of their lives. So, kidding aside, we've got a good cross section of people on that board, and they want to see downtown Southampton improve. They want to see it as a destination point. And by golly, I think we're going to pull this off. So thanks to Sarah and the rest of the BIA.
It's no wonder they think you're so lovely, eh, John? Are there further questions or comments from members? I don't say, well, thanks very much, Sarah, for coming in this evening. And the BIA is a great and important partner with the town, and we're really keen to continue to work with you on Streetscape and all of the events that you're planning and all the work that you're doing. We're eager for your success and thankful for your work. So thanks for coming in, and make sure to keep us updated. And also, I would say, work with our staff as you're working on things like your levy and whatnot. You don't necessarily have to wait for reports at council, whatnot. Reach out to our clerk directly and talk to her about those processes and also your everything you're doing. Seek advice from our staff. You're a municipal board. And so, it's a direct offshoot of the municipality, and our staff and council are here to help you succeed.
Awesome.
So-
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our delegations, and now we'll head down to item 8, reports of municipal officers and committee, and pardon me, it's 8, so these should all be 8s and not 7. So item 8.4, which is community services, parks and recreation, and we have a staff report on Lamont Sports Park Phase 2 detailed design and pre-budget approval. And so I'll turn it over to the Director of Community Services and Operations.
Great, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Phase 1 development of Lamont Sports Park is complete and play will commence on the first 4 diamonds next spring, which is just 5 short months away. At the October 11th meeting, council approved the Phase 2 conceptual design and directed staff to return on December 12th with a detailed design and budget estimate for construction. Phase 2 elements presented in the conceptual design included a hardball diamond, softball diamond, bleachers, players' benches, trail connections, parking, accessible playground, pavilion, field house, landscaping, trees, maintenance building, and yard. At that meeting, it was discussed that all elements included in the conceptual design for Phase 2 may not be included in the construction tender, that council would have an opportunity at the December 12th meeting to review the elements, the associated budget costs, and the source of funding, and provide approval for the elements which will be included in the construction tender. The fundraising campaign was an incredible success. The volunteer committee members include Mike Myatt, Rob Stanley, John Davinsky, Rob Fawcett, Michael Martin, Jeff Myatt, Connor Ure, Nicole Marsh, Lindsay Little, Greg Tatey, and Barry Dunlop. I want to provide a clarification on the fundraising campaign figure noted in the report. The amount of $1,733,809 raised for Phase 2 of the Lamont's fundraise committee is correct. The value of the in-kind support is currently at $30,500, bringing the total fundraising amount to $1,764,309. I apologize for the inaccuracy in the in-kind total amount within the report and confirm that that clarification does not revise the amount suggested to be funded by the municipality. So congratulations to the fundraising team on a successful campaign and surpassing their original target of $1 million. John Shank and Julia Steele from Landscape Planning Limited will provide council with an overview of the Phase 2 design in their presentation. I want to recognize Paul Gardner from Landscape Planning as well. He has been our lead on this project and is sitting on a beach somewhere on a very well-deserved vacation. Paul's contribution towards Phase 1 and Phase 2 are very appreciated. Before I turn it over to John and Julia, I will provide a brief overview of the elements included in Phase 2 of Lamont Sports Park. They include site preparation, grading, drainage and site surfacing, site electrical, irrigation, hardscape paving, 2 diamonds, which are hardball and softball, site features, soft landscaping, trail connections, signage, accessible playground, and 2 washroom units. So if John and Julia, if you would deliver the presentation and walk us through the Phase 2 design. Following that, I'll close out the presentation of the report and we will field questions from members of council.
Thank you, Christian, for the lovely introduction. Can everyone see my screen? I'm going to assume yes. Okay, awesome. With that, I'll just jump right into it. So we'll start with a quick refresher on the existing site conditions at the park, in the park. As part of the Phase 1 developments, we have 4 softball diamonds with a central shade structure, associated parking lot, trail connections to an existing trail to the east, and an internal road that can bring users in from Concession Road 6. On the screen now is our park master plan for the development of Phase 2. You can see to the north, we've proposed a fenced maintenance yard for parks operations staff and vehicles with potential for a future maintenance building or garage. Central to the park is sort of the main hub of the phase 2 elements that we will be proposing. To connect the kind of the phase 1 pinwheel of softball diamonds to our main hub, we've created a strong pedestrian access along the middle to bring the two zones together. And then to the west, we've expanded on the existing trail connection, bringing users up to the existing Walmart that's to the west of the site. As you can see to the, I guess, northwest, there's still a large open area for any future park development that should follow. I'll proceed to the next slide with an enlargement of the same plan so we can better see some of the other elements that are proposed, including a hardball diamond. The hardball diamond will be lit, irrigated. It'll include players' dugouts, 2 practice pitches, 3 spectator bleachers, and the net backstop system. The softball diamond will have a similar treatment as well, fully lit, irrigated, players' dugouts, practice pitches, bleachers, and the netting backstop. We've proposed an additional parking lot that can house 100 cars, including 4 accessible parking spots, with room for the expansion of the parking lot in the future should additional parking be required. We have also proposed an accessible and inclusive playground, more central in the hub, with accessible lay-by parking stalls in close proximity to the playground along the internal road. Between the accessible playground and the diamonds, we've created a concrete plaza area that can accommodate a future shade pavilion with an allocated area for a future washroom and canteen building. To the south, down the pedestrian spine, we have a fenced-in compound that will include double batting tunnel and 2 practice pitches with potential for a future storage shed for baseball and softball equipment. Between the outfields of both diamonds and the parking lots, we proposed a linear 20-foot height netting to protect the cars in the lots in the event that a ball is hit even further than the outfields. The park will include site furnishings similar to the phase 1 pinwheel, including benches, litter receptacles, bike racks. Here we've included some imagery to demonstrate the intent of some of the elements we've mentioned. This first image here shows the backstop netting. The backstop netting can be found in some many high-end baseball facilities, as it's better for the spectators' experience, as it's easier to see through than your typical chain link backstop. And then as well in the second image, you can see that linear netting that I spoke of in the outfield to protect the parking lots. So it's the similar, same posts and similar mesh netting. Both the softball and hardball diamonds will have Marco plate infield and warning track surfacing, as shown in the next image. And then here we see the bleachers. As I mentioned, each diamond will have 3 of these 5-tier bleachers. This is the same treatment as the existing softball diamonds in the phase 1. The players' dugouts will be chain link as well with aluminum roofing. Again, same matching treatment as the existing diamonds on site to bring it all together. This last image here represents the double batting tunnels that I mentioned that'll be in the beside the practice pitches. It again is that mesh netting that you see at the backstops and protecting the parking lot. Here's some more images to kind of demonstrate the surface materials that we'll be using. We've incorporated the sandblasted concrete baseball feature in the main plaza area, just to give a little interest and really, what's the word I'm looking for? Just to add some interest to the main plaza in the center. The parking lot will include accessible parking stalls, as I mentioned. The accessible parking stalls will be asphalt paving along with the walkway connections. complete with your tactile warning strips and your line paintings. Whereas the rest of the parking lot will be that recycled asphalt that we see in the existing parking lot on site, which is just more of a granular surface. The accessible playground will be rubber, poured in place rubber surfacing to be in line with our goal to have a fully accessible and inclusive playground. And all of the seed lawn, all the lawn on site will be seeded, similar treatment to what we did on the phase one. And as you can see from that image, which is an image of phase one, that has come through quite nicely. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that anybody has at this time regarding the design.
Thank you very much for that presentation. As council seen in the presentation, it's important to identify elements that were excluded from the current design that potentially will be considered at a future phase for the development of the park. It's critical that the allocation for these future amenities be taken into consideration when designing phase two to ensure that all facility components fit within the full park build out. Potential future capital requests include but are not limited to pavilion, the playground sun shelter, additional tree planting, the washroom and canteen building, the completion of phase two parking lot, and minor ball storage. I want to highlight the additional requested elements that are included in the phase two design for council consideration. The maintenance and shop yard, staff and equipment that will be stationed out of Lamont Sports Park require adequate facilities. Staff will be exploring options for shop and storage requirements within the budget request of $300,000. The location of the shop and the yard is to the right of the main road entering the park past the main gate. The North Trail connection, the town was fortunate to secure funding of $45,000 through RTO 7 for the North Trail connection. This connection occurs at the northern tip of phase one to the rail trail. A stipulation of the funding was for the construction of the trail to be complete prior to the end of 2022. The trail construction was complete last week and we are very pleased with the outcome. 2 washroom units. This budget request of $550,000 allows for the installation of 2 modular washroom units. One would service phase one at the north end of the park, and the second would be installed within phase two development. The exact location of the units will be determined after further consultation with staff and the consultant. These units likely will not be available for the 2023 season, and arrangements for portable units will be made for next season. The thought behind this was to ensure adequate washroom facilities were included for phase one and phase two of the park, knowing that the main washroom and canteen building could be deferred to a future year. And the accessible playground. In 2019, the town was successful in winning $250,000 from Kraft Heinz Project Play, and these funds are allocated towards the installation of a fully accessible playground at Lamont Sports Park. After consultation with a reputable manufacturer, it was determined that additional funds would be required to ensure that the new playground at Lamont Sports Park was fully accessible, fully inclusive, and the most amount of play value possible within the budgeted amount. An additional $150,000 on top of the Kraft Heinz $250 for the new playground will allow us to build a fully accessible park that all users will be able to enjoy. There is a minimal standard for playgrounds and accessible playgrounds. Oftentimes we follow the standard and we miss the mark. We miss the spirit in which the standards were created. In order to ensure we build a park that creates an experience for inclusion and provides play experience for people with disabilities and their families, we have volunteers from the newly formed Grey Bruce Play Group to provide insight onto the development of the park. I want to thank Whitney Bonnet and Jeff Burgo for their time and commitment on this wonderful addition to Lamont Sports Park and the community of Saugeen Shores. So let's talk about our favorite topic, finances. The Legacy Fund was created in 2019 to support the funding of large, significant projects, which could include recreational sports or cultural centers or any other project as deemed by council. The annual contribution towards the Legacy Fund is just over $2.4 million. Prior to the launch of the fundraising campaign, a commitment from the town of $1,250,000 for phase two was provided to match the fundraising goal of the committee of $1 million. As mentioned earlier, the fundraising committee raised just over $1.7 million towards the completion of phase two. If approved, the total amount of phase two contribution is $4,208,777. The recommendation includes the municipality to fund the remaining $2,179,968. The Legacy Fund Reserve is currently supporting the Lamont Sports Park Phase 1 annual debt payment and has the capacity to fund the recommended municipal capital contribution of Phase 2, which is just over the $2.1 million. The described financial plan for Lamont Sports Park Phase 2 leaves capacity in the Legacy Fund for a capital contribution towards the Aquatic and Wellness Center project of $6 million and the anticipated annual debt payment of that project with no additional impact on the tax levy. The next steps for this project include issuing a request for pre-qualification for a general contractor, which will be complete this week. The pre-qualification will close the middle of January, and those that score over 70% will be considered to be pre-qualified and eligible to build on the construction of Phase 2. Our friends at Landscape Planning will work to finalize the details of the design for tendering based on council direction this evening. The tender for construction will be issued the middle of February, awarded in late March or early April, with construction commencing in late April. We anticipate the construction of Phase 2 to be complete in November of 2023 and ready for play in spring of 2025. So I want to thank Julia, John, and Paul from Landscape Planning, and also a very special shout out to our project manager, Steve Hardy, and our parks manager, Frank Burrows, who are also on the call tonight. We are happy to take any questions that council have regarding the recommendations. And I'll just repeat that recommendation that council approve the recommended elements and associated costs for Phase 2 construction of Lamont Sports Park, and that council provide pre-budget approval for Lamont Sports Park in Phase 2 in the amount of $4,208,777. And we're happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you to the director and to John and Julia, and you have heard the recommendation, so we'll take discussion. Councillor Stack, and then the deputy mayor.
I just had a question on the Legacy Fund growth chart. For 2030 to $1 million, is that the correct balance? Sorry, it looks like it. Can you just walk me through how we get to 1.5?
And turn that over to the treasurer or to the director of corporate services.
As you can see, by 2024, the fund's balance approaches near zero. And then as a result of the net, there's a net contribution each year, the 2.4 million contribution net of the debt payments still leaves a residual. And so that fund will grow then again over the coming years to $1.5 million by 2030.
Let's just, Councillor Stack, would you just make sure to bring your mic close to you and speak right into it so folks listening at home can hear you?
So sorry, so we're at 574,000 by 2025. And so like I see we're missing, so presumably there's a bunch of inputs up between 2025 and 2030. Can we just see it? It's difficult without seeing the intervening years. Is it possible to discuss that or to circulate that?
Yeah, we can circulate that after the meeting, just for the purpose of this report. It was just easier to fit fewer years on there, but we'll be happy to send that out after this meeting.
And then my other question is, have we considered the overall funding strategies, given what we may see in terms of changes to revenue with Bill 23? I know I've raised this in the past. I'm new. I don't understand exactly how we fund the legacy fund, but when we're talking about this type of investment, which includes an additional investment to the original commitment, I just want some sort of comfort that we've walked through how that potential change will affect our funding for these types of programs going forward, particularly given, we want to ensure that the aquatic center is protected going forward.
Yeah, I think, it's just to be clear, the legacy fund is funded directly by the tax levy. So it isn't impacted by changes to the planning income we have or development charges, these kinds of things. So it's set by the tax levy and funded by the tax levy. So I can turn over to the director of corporate service. I don't expect Bill 23 is going to have an impact on the legacy fund. Do you?
No, I agree with that statement. Indirectly, obviously, any changes to
coming from Bill 23 could have an impact on the town in total, which could have an impact on taxes. But what we're doing here with the legacy fund is completely independent of Bill 23.
Okay, so I'll ask you a different question. And so I just, again, brand new, so I just want, sorry, brand new. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So with those changes and the potential implications to how we collect taxes in future, are there any other programs that would require funding through the legacy fund that may be as a result of changes to how we tax? Like, are we thinking that through?
So it's important to note that council established a legacy fund for a very specific purpose, which was to build an aquatics and wellness center primarily, and also to build other recreation projects. We've actually been able to stretch it into doing a few other things, but council created the legacy fund to do this in particular. So this is the coming to fruition of a plan that's been in place for 4 or 5 years. So we really don't have an expectation that the legacy fund will fund other projects at all. We built it for this purpose, and that's why, and we're using it for that purpose. Jim, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm in agreement.
The deputy mayor.
Thank you, and through you, couple of questions and then a comment. But the first one related to the chart that I think some of us were just looking at, the phase 1 debt payments. How far out do they go? Is 2030 the end of that? Is that?
So phase 1 is through 2041.
2041, okay. A question for you, Director Schreider. The washroom units that you mentioned, and you said modular units, is the intention that they become permanent, so that in the end, they would be additional washroom units to a structure that would be a canteen? Is that the idea?
Thank you for the question. And the phase 1 washroom, we believe will be permanent. It will stay there to service the north end of the park. And the phase 2 washroom, we believe that it would be permanent as well. We just want to have a look at where the future canteen and washroom facility will be and locate that so that it can service not only phase 2, but also any future phases that may be considered as well.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just indicate that some of the elements that are being pushed out a little bit further have a whole lot to do with shade, and whatever we can do to have trees start growing and shade there, because it's a pretty exposed site, and that would just be a good idea. I did want to ask a question though. We're about to vote on something, but we have some other pre-budget approval items on the regular council agenda. Does this have to go there too to be quote unquote really official? Because I noticed this pre-budget approval isn't on the other agenda. Should it be? Thank you.
Maybe I'll put that to the Director of Corporate Services if he has an answer.
Given our current procedures, I think you are correct that it should technically be on the other, on the regular committee as well.
It will come to regular council, so it'll be approved here. If it's approved here tonight, then it will come to a regular council meeting, a subsequent regular council meeting for final approval. So this isn't final approval this evening.
Okay, does that then enable this ability to go out tomorrow asking for something? That doesn't cause any wrinkles with that? Just
not sure what the director's expectation is. We can turn it over to Director Schreier.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So our intent is to issue the pre-qualification for the general contractor this week. So we can go ahead and do that. And then by the time that it closes, we'll have that full budget amount approval from council.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
We take comments later, or should I do my comments now, or do it all at once?
I think we're coming to the conclusion on this discussion, so you should make all your comments.
Okay, just give me a couple of minutes. First of all, Mr. Mayor, thank you to the committee. Worked extremely hard, and wonderful group of volunteers. Set a goal of $1 million set by this council about a year ago, and that committee is going to probably come in around 1.8. with in-kind services. So maybe 1.9 if the Home Builders and Trades Association end up coming up and building the pavilion. We'll see. We're making that presentation in the new year. But thank you to the committee and tries into the consulting firm, just a well laid out report, and articulated very well. Really, really pleased. If I heard once, I've heard it 101 times. Why is there no washroom facility built out there as part of phase one? Well, it's going to be part of phase two. We hope if this vote goes through tonight, have to have washroom facilities. And I know the more expensive one, 1.5 million, I think it was, for a washroom canteen is probably going to be deferred as in your report you're recommending, which makes good sense. But having that washroom facility at the north end with the 4 diamonds and then something central with phase two just makes perfect sense. We have to have washrooms. And yes, you can do portables for short term, maybe long term, but why would we? I mean, it's a Class A facility, the finest facility in Southwest Ontario, no doubt. So, but this budget, it's higher than it was 2 or 3 years ago, but the cost of material supplies has gone up close to 20% in 3 years. And the washroom facilities are $550,000 alone. It wasn't in the original numbers. So I think with those numbers, you've got the washroom units 550, and you've got a maintenance yard. Well, we have to. I mean, it's a $10 million facility, and you have to have equipment to maintain that park. And so we knew this was coming. You have to have a building to put the equipment in. So the maintenance yard is pretty critical. And what a wonderful accessible playground it's going to be. And I did have a question about that. Will the accessible playground all inclusive have rubber flooring?
Yes, thank you for the question, and it will. We are going to include that in the tender documents.
Similar to Southampton, accessible playground. And I walked that trail system that Snyder Contracting just completed, and what a wonderful trail system we're going to have at Lamont Sports Park. It's not done yet. I mean, around the whole park, so eventually someday it'll be wonderful. But you don't just have 4 or 6 ball diamonds. You've got an accessible playground. You're going to have a pavilion. You're going to have batting cages. You're going to have a trail system. It's just going to be a world-class facility. And yes, it's over what we projected 2-3 years ago. But inflation's gone up a lot, and we've added some things to this, and we've been able to do some of these things because the fundraising campaign went from 1 million to 1.8. So we're able to do a few extra things too. So I just think this is an all around wonderful initiative. And I want to thank the community for stepping up to the plate, pardon the pun, but I think that they did step up to the plate, and they came forward with their donations, and it's just been a great community initiative. And all started with Kraft Heinz Project Play. And we had $250,000 we won with that Canada-wide competition, and culminated with, the museum there, that big announcement that was made, and Mayor was there with his jersey on, and it was a great night. And from that 250,000, look where we ended up. So this is the facility that our community is going to be very, very proud of. And we've made investments in our library. We've made investments at the Coliseum in Southampton, 1.2 million. We've made investments all over our community. This is an investment, 1,400 ball players, 1,400 families, playing ball in that facility. We're going to attract some provincial and Canadian tournaments, and economic spin-offs are going to be great. We're going to fill every motel room in this community, and in some of our shoulder seasons, we're going to fill some hotels, restaurants. So anyways, we've already sold the concept of Lamont Sports Park, but it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful facility, and something that our entire community is, including the 200-seat pavilion people use for picnics and anniversaries and celebrations. It's got something for everybody. So I just can't wait for the ribbon cutting next May. So anyways, thanks again to the community, and thanks to the committee for the great work they did, and thanks to staff. Right, this is a great report. Thank you.
Okay, further questions or comments? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it was a pleasure again, as I say, working with Mike Myatt. He had that look in his eye, and no matter what you said to him, he had that look in his eye, and we were going to do this, and we did it. And I might add that Kristen Schreider mentioned all the members of that committee, but she was a member of the committee as well at the beginning, and she certainly helped lay the foundation before this opportunity came up for her with Saugeen Shores, and she had to leave that committee. So I want to recognize her there. Through you to Kristen, two questions that I get from constituents when you talk about this. First thing they say, are any tax dollars being used to develop this park?
Thank you for the question. As stated in the report is that the annual contribution for the Legacy Reserve Fund is just over $2.4 million. And the project is being financed through the Lamont Sports Fund or the Legacy Fund reserve with no additional impact to the tax levy.
Okay, so I've asked that question. This one might be a little more difficult to answer long-term. Can this, meaning the ballparks and a new aquatic and wellness center be afforded?
Thank you for the question. The Legacy Fund Reserve growth chart that's shown in tonight's report for Lamont Sports Park is similar, if not the same, for the report that you'll see on Thursday night with regards to the Aquatic and Wellness Center. What those reports indicate is that, as Mayor Charbonneau had mentioned earlier, is that the Legacy Fund was established and contributions annually towards this reserve fund is here to help support these projects.
Thank you. I hope the people that ask these questions on several occasions are watching tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments, questions, Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question, and it reminded me when John said he gets asked questions, and the question that I get asked in the community is, why don't we call it the Lamont Baseball Park? Because that's what it is. It's a baseball park. And Vice Deputy Mayor said there's something there for everybody. And quite frankly, I have to challenge that statement because not everybody plays baseball. And really, there's a playground, certainly, there's going to be a playground. And that'll be, I would surmise, primarily for the kids of the parents who are playing baseball. But it's a baseball park. And I get that from people in the community. Why, what's the sports about it? It's a baseball park. It's not a sports park. That's the question I get. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
Of course, there's a big blank area to the south yet in that park that one day could be something else, and it probably will be because we have an awful lot of baseball diamonds there and probably won't be needing any more for the foreseeable future. So my anticipation would be you may see some other sports in that park, not anytime soon, because I think we have spent enough money as of today on this park for quite a while, but down the road, and as our community becomes more diverse and you see folks playing cricket and you see folks playing different sports, and as that develops, I think there may be some other opportunities there for sports beyond baseball. That's just my thoughts. Anyway, are there further comments from members? Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just, I mentioned earlier, but it's going to be a wonderful, and Councillor Matt challenged my comment, but I think having that wonderful trail system throughout that park, there's sections built already. We've got the accessible playground is going to be amazing. Got a 200-seat picnic shelter pavilion for anniversaries and picnics. We've got, I think there's a lot of going to be, and the south end, yes, there could be a lot of other things besides ball diamonds, that's for sure. But I think it's going to be a well-rounded facility, something for a lot of people to use in our community. But I did have one question. Rides again is about the bicycle park. I don't think I see a budget item. Is it going to be a bicycle park, a section, for bike racks? And because it's connected to the Saugeen Rail Trail now, which is wonderful. I expect a lot of people ride their bikes in to use the accessible playground, the able-bodied people, and also to the pavilion and the ball diamonds. And I think you'll see a lot of bikes coming into the park. So are there going to be a lot of bike racks and fastened installed?
Yes, thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, is that there will be bike racks installed throughout the park. Yeah.
That's good news. Will there be a connecting link between Walmart into the park? And can you comment on that?
Yes, thank you for the question, and included as part of the design for phase 2 through the fundraising campaign actually is that there'll be the secondary trail link from just behind Walmart down to Lamont Sports Park.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further comments or questions? Councillor Stack.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the accessibility point. So I'm just, again, I'm just a bit concerned as Bill locate, like we're talking about making an accessible playground, and I understand that was the purpose of the funding. But it is the other side of town. Sorry. So I have concerns with focusing on the accessibility of the playground, given its location at the outskirts of the park. So, or at the outskirts of town. So it does create some challenges for families who may have mobility issues to just have to go to one side of the park or of the town versus the other. And so in future, we may want to consider providing more accessible play areas in central Port Elgin. There's a big one in Southampton. So there's something to look at in the future if we're talking about making facilities more accessible across town. It has to be more than just on the far reaches of either side.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments? I don't see any. Well, I appreciate all the work on putting this together. It's a great design, and I think it's going to be an excellent addition to the park and to the community. I think that and with regard to the accessible playground, I mean, that's a key thing. It's been a long time coming to get an accessible playground in Port Elgin. It really is, although Lamont Sports Park feels like it's out of town, it's actually pretty central to the south part of Port Elgin, because the park is actually pushed quite deep into that part if you look at it from above. So I think it's going to be, there and able to be used by lots of people in the community, and folks will be able to get to it using that trail system, and of course to drive to it. And it's going to be a really important thing, because it'll be nice to have one facility like that in each of Southampton and Port Elgin. So I'm looking forward to that in particular, but the whole project is an exciting one, and one we're keen to move forward to. And I just want to go back and reemphasize that we always knew these projects would be very expensive. We always knew that they would be a challenge to get done. That's why we created the Legacy Fund. We contribute $2.4 million annually, already built into the tax rate to that fund. It's a lot of money, and it needs to be a lot of money in order to carry these big sports projects, these big recreation projects that we've known for a very long time. Of course, the pool much longer than baseball, that they had to be done. And so the Legacy Fund was a way to be able to handle those huge expenses and actually get those projects done for the people of our community. So it's been a plan, and it's a plan that's coming to fruition, and it's a plan that's working. It's enabling us to build these things without having to further increase taxes. So it's a positive thing. And the final thing I have is a question for the director. So we're going to build all these baseball diamonds will be constructed. Was it 6 diamonds now in Lamont Sports Park? When will we now start to have the discussion about beginning to decommission existing baseball diamonds? I mean, we have the Cameron Park diamonds, which are really just a stone's throw away from these diamonds, very, very close to the ones we're building here, and other baseball facilities, which may be a little long in the tooth or which may not work as well. When will we start to discuss that process and the potential either to monetize some of that property to help pay for these costs, or alternatively to do other things with those lands, like potentially affordable and attainable housing or other things? What are you thinking for when we'll start to have that discussion?
Thank you for the question. I think that you'll see us starting to work together with the asset management team in infrastructure and development, and looking at that in 2023 and getting that priority list together and bring back to council for consideration.
I think that's good, because that's the other important side to this thing that folks should remember, is that there will be some changes with some of our other infrastructure, or with council's approval, obviously, which might help us to pay for this even more quickly than we're projecting, or at least be able to focus on some other priorities that we have. So looking forward to those discussions. Anyway, thanks for the discussion, and you've heard the recommendation. If there's nothing further, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the second staff report, which is a landowner land use agreement on McKinnon Lane and the Shipley Trail, and the director.
I see that our Parks Manager, Frank Burrows, is on the line tonight. I think he'll be presenting this one. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Yes, I have a report for a landowner land use agreement on the Shipley Trail. And for some context, the Shipley and Izzard Trail is a small trail that runs between Izzard Road, up Mitchell Lane, across through the beautiful forested area, below Ridge Street and then back into McKinnon Lane and onto Shipley Avenue. It's a critical connecting route that allows the Port Elgin Main Beach to connect to over near Gobles Grove. There is a number of private landowners in that area. Right now, we have 6 landowner agreements through that area. We have one section at the far south end near McKinnon that does not yet have a landowner agreement. And this agreement is to establish an agreement on that section. Part of this report is also the possible reroute of the trail. At the McKinnon Lane end, there is a creek there, and the one landowner has expressed some interest in trying to reroute the trail to get a better route. The goal of that reroute is to get most of the trail on town lands and less on private lands. And so we're going to explore in 2023 rerouting that trail. That'll be in the budget 2023. This report is just asking for the landowner land use agreement to McKinnon Lane. And we've been in touch with the landowner on that section, and they're in agreement, and they're desirable to have this landowner agreement in place.
Okay, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize a landowner land use agreement between the town of Saugeen Shores and the private landowner to permit Shipley Trail to cross private lands adjacent to McKinnon Lane. Questions or comments from members? Vice Deputy Mayor?
Mine's really a comment, Mr. Mayor, and that's to thank David Schemmel. I communicated with him today via email. I've known David for 10, 15 years. He's been to this council to speak on several occasions about the new aquatic facility over time. And, you know, I just really want to thank David, and I think he's listening tonight too, but and hopefully staff will be sending a letter of thank you, Frank, to Mr. Schemmel, because this is, you know, I mean, if this it doesn't happen, it just was not to happen. I mean, that Shipley Trail doesn't empty out onto Shipley Avenue. So, you know, McKinnon Lane is critical, and by reconstructing, you know, that trail on the north side of the creek, I think, and removing it off of McKinnon, I think is really something that Mr. Schemmel needs to be thanked for. It's not something he had to do. He could have said, no, I'm shutting the trail down. I'm not wanting to get a build on our land across the river, the creek, but he's doing it. So please pass on our thanks via letter. Frank, I hope that happens. And if I could ask our manager to do that, Mr. Mayor, I just think it's a great thing for long term. And I think also those 6 other landowners along Shipley Trail, I hope we're communicating with them, and a yearly letter of thanks to those 6 landowners never hurts either, Frank. And you know, without those landowners signing those agreements, Shipley Trail doesn't happen. That's a really important link between Gobles Grove and Port Elgin Beach. And so just my thanks to Mr. Schemmel again, and thanks for engineering this agreement, Frank. It's something that's really, really important. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll relay to the landowners.
Yeah, that's great. And I'd be happy to sign a letter if you were to send one. I think we sent letters to when we last updated with the folks, with the other landowners on Shipley Trail. We have sent them a letter of thanks. And so certainly that would be in order. Are there other questions or comments from members? I don't see any. So you've heard the recommendation, and I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're off that one now and on to communications, petitions for information, 4 items there. Anyone have any comments on any of those 4 items? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Walmart's letter to you suggests that they're embarking on a strategy to be known as a regenerative company. And I realize that Smart Centers owns the lot that Walmart's on, but if you ever have, they asked to meet with you to talk about things. If you ever have the occasion to meet with them, you know, they have one of the biggest expanses of parking lots in Saugeen Shores. There are a couple of trees that were planted in some boulevards, but their idea of being regenerative, you know, whatever they can do to add a little green and a little more sustainable kind of look to their parking lot, I think it would go a long way to improve that brand idea. I realize they don't own the parking lot, but it fits in with what they're talking about. Thank you.
It's a good note, and the emails are going back and forth today to set up a meeting in January. So I'll certainly bring that to them when we do meet. Are there further comments on any of these 4 items? Councillor Mayet, and then we'll come back to the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one item that caught my attention was the one from the Ministry of Natural Resources, Forestry and Mines. And that was, I just want clarification. Are they, it was a little vague as to what they're after there. Are they talking about using perhaps like an underground mine, like the salt caves in Goderich as a carbon storage, capture and storage facility? Is that what they're getting at here? Any idea?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely certain. I only have the information that's in the letter, and I haven't researched it much more deeply than that. But we can certainly look into it more carefully, or if you want,
I'll do
to,
so.
and let us know.
Yeah, I will, because it intrigues me, but okay, thanks.
The deputy mayor.
Just as a second comment, 773 about long-term care. There's an opportunity, or there's a suggestion that this group is willing to share data with us. I hope we get the data. There are 3 local sites that fit into the long-term care institutional kind of building, but the amount of activity that those sites generate, I know quite a few people who've moved here because the parent was in there. And so whatever we can do to support the 3 long-term care facilities is a great thing. The one in Southampton is about to start their expansion too, which we heard about years ago here, and I think they're going to get to it now. But the opportunity to follow up about sharing data, I hope we get the data that this group has collected. Thank you.
I will be meeting with them on the 10th of January, so I'll ask them for the data. Maybe send me an email about both of those things so I don't forget your comments. But I certainly will pass along anything any member of council wants me to raise with either of those organizations. If there's nothing further on those, then we will move on to reports of the department heads. 3 reports there. The first one is an information report on the healthcare portfolio review. Turn it over to the manager of strategic initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors. One of the major initiatives this year was to initiate a review of the town's healthcare portfolio. At the May 9th Committee of Whole meeting, an information report was brought forward that highlighted the initial findings after a 5-month review. That report outlined the program's strengths, gaps, and areas for improvement. This report is a continuation of that review, highlighting the current landscape for healthcare and the recruitment of physicians in the context of growth seen in Saugeen Shores. The full 10-month review in the context of community growth and challenges facing the health sector form the 7 areas of focus outlined in the report in front of you. The next steps include focusing on the organized priority first, moving forward on discussions with potential program partners identified, and building out the education connections, communications, and retention program. Currently, the physician recruitment file lacks sufficient staff resources to administer. A recommendation in the 2023 business plan and budget is to formalize the customer service coordinator communications role and have this position provide administrative support resources to this file. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions or comments? We'll start with Councilor Dubinsky, then come to the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jill, for this report. It's a great report, and it got me thinking again with the municipal elections we've just had. Many of the councils have a new outlook, perhaps, and maybe some new opinions. I wonder if it's time to revisit the doctors recruitment committee between Saugeen Shores, Kincardine, and Bruce Power. I throw it out there as a question. I don't know. To me, it sounds like it's time. Comment?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I mentioned Bruce Power. If you look at my report, the point on partnerships, Bruce Power is a very strong partner in our community on various subjects, including healthcare. And I think, of course, it's a good opportunity to reach back out to Bruce Power to see where they are on that file. I would also offer that the file has changed a bit over the years, and there are a lot of gaps, and perhaps we can work with Bruce Power, you know, in a different agreement that would capture some of the gaps that we're facing now. Thank you.
So under those circumstances, do I ask or do I ask you if staff can bring back a report on this particular issue?
Yeah, certainly it's something we can visit. It's something that has been on my agenda to visit with the mayor of Kincardine. And to get a sense of what their council's appetite might be for that at this time, and sort of along exactly along the same lines as what the manager of strategic initiatives is talking about how we work together on a broader set of issues, particularly healthcare professionals throughout the system, from primary care providers, nurses, laboratory technologists, the whole slate, and how we can perhaps maybe have a new agreement that would look differently and perhaps bring in Bruce Power as a partner. So it's been something on my agenda, and maybe I'd ask you if you let me work on it a little bit, and then along with the manager strategic initiatives, and if we can make some progress, we'll come back. It is something that's a priority for me. I can tell you that. Is that acceptable, Councillor?
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to come to the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then I'll go to the Deputy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to you, to Joe, John, Councilor Davinsky, I agree. I served 4 years on the physician recruitment team, and right at the tail end, Kincardine did back out of that agreement. I thought that was a sad day that Kincardine decided not to be part of the physician recruitment committee. Bruce Power then, of course, withdrew funding. And I'm pleased to hear that the mayor is going to take this on, because I agree with you. I think there's room, an important role for that physician recruitment team to play. So I'm on board with you, and I certainly would support take a look at the numbers, but support some kind of recommendation in the future that brings back that committee, because I think it's really, really important. And we should be doing it. And we've done well with physician recruitment. And Jill, I've asked this question, I think once a year, and I'll ask you again. And no one seems to ever really provide me with the accurate number. Maybe you can look into it and get back to all of council. But the orphan patient list, I ask every year, what's it at? What's it at? And I can't believe down in Toronto, in the big ivory towers down there, that they can't provide us with a number of how many Saugeen Shores residents are on the orphan patient list. And we've done well. The physician recruitment that's happened here in the last 5-10 years has been 3, 4, 5 doctors in the last 3 years, another one coming next summer. So are there still people in this community without a doctor, and why? I guess that's the question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question. That's an important one. I do know the numbers. The Health Connects prefers that we not make those numbers public, because they really don't have a good picture on the number of people that don't have doctors in our community. So if I gave out a number, it's my gauge to see how many people we're taking off that list, but it's not a really good gauge as understanding the full complement of people that need doctors. I can tell you on a positive note that we have fewer than 1,000 people on that list, that with the recruitments of the last 3 doctors, we're starting to really lower the number of people on that list. So it's looking really good, with the last couple of doctors, Dr. Khan and Dr. Whitaker, that hopefully we'll get that list, as low as possible.
2 new doctors in the next year, Jill, or what? Where are we at? I think it's
through you, Mr. Mayor, we're always recruiting. It doesn't stop, but we do have, we have an agreement starting next summer, and then the one after that,
thought so.
a year later. Yeah.
Listen, I really appreciate hearing from you that there's less than 1,000, at least 3. At least that's a start. And if we have 1 or 2 new doctors coming in, if it's less than 1,000, hopefully within a year, that there will not be a resident in Saugeen Shores without a family doctor. So that would be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, just as a comment, I came off the orphan list late November, so there's one off the list. I wanted to encourage you, Jill, you have a number of areas of focus, but the partnerships and the advocacy part, whatever comes up as you're doing work, and whoever's helping you with a number of things, whatever comes up that requires or would benefit from something from us, please bring it here, because so many of the items that you mentioned are outside of our area. control or just even influence in many ways. But whatever we can do, we should go there. The one area that I didn't notice mentioned, and it's probably there, just disguised as something else, but the whole area of in-home care is a big part of the healthcare equation. And as somebody who has a parent who's still in his house and was used to, before the pandemic, having some support coming in out of the house, and that all disappeared, and it's slowly coming back. But I'm hearing more and more from other people about how they would be quite happy to stay in their own home if there were some supports and some regularity to some things. And so it is a part of the healthcare model, but advocacy and partnership, whatever we can help in terms of presenting a solid message that, hey, we're willing to partner, or we need this. Has the fastest growing community, it seems, in the world, will go beyond just Ontario or our region. The province needs to pay attention to us. And so thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just one more comment, and to you to Jill. Jill, I've made this statement in the past too. One orphan patient is one patient too many, in my view. But could you give out the number for those people who still can't find a doctor and aren't able to? Could you provide tonight for the media listening the Healthcare Connect number for people to register?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that number memorized. I apologize. I thought somebody might ask me that, and I don't have the number in front of
That's
me.
okay.
But it's on our website.
That's okay.
Yeah.
If I just mentioned to people that don't have a family doctor, please register with Healthcare Connect. You can get it online. It's there.
And certainly people can reach out to me, and I'm happy to
Okay.
give the number out.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Okay, are there further comments? Thank you for this report, Jill, and all this work. I think you've done some tremendous work in really stepping up our game on physician recruitment in the last, since you came on board. And you can see here some of the plans going forward. As any member of the public wants to look at this report can see, this is certainly an area that the town is taking very seriously and continuing to work on as we need to. We talked about partnerships, and the one partnership that's just worth re-highlighting over and over again is that Victoria Order of Nurses nurse practitioner clinic that we have. That's a real opportunity for us to work with them and continue to expand that service. I really think that providing primary care through that model creates great opportunities for us to be more nimble in responding to the need of the public, and having physicians and nurses and lab techs and all of these people all the way up and down the system. We need to compete hard for these people. It's unfortunate that's the situation that the whole world is in, or at least Ontario is in, but it is the situation that we're in. And luckily for us, no community is better situated to compete for people on quality of life than Saugeen Shores. And as we do things like build ballparks and build aquatic centers and build the community up to be a great place, an even greater place to live than it already is, it increases our competitive advantage in this market. And of course, having people like Jill and our strategic initiatives department working on it helps an awful lot too. So anyway, thank you for providing this report, and we'll look forward to hearing more in the future. So then we're on to our information report on the job evaluation update and our manager of human resources.
Report was to update council on the recent project that we have completed through HR by the use of a consultant, Gallagher Canada, to have a look at our job evaluation process and make sure that it was up to date using a tool that ensures that we're comparing their wages to comply with the Pay Equity Act. We've completed that process. All the staff have had an opportunity in the non-union group to complete their job information questionnaire, or we call it a JVQ, to provide that information that looked at the number of factors that this tool assesses. Those include decision-making, financial accountability, leadership or supervisory responsibility, information accountability, impact of errors, communication and working relationships, both internal and external to the organization, working conditions, considering physical environment, sensory attention, and mental stress. And lastly, qualifications, including your education experience and any professional certifications that are necessary to perform each position. So the consultant evaluated all of the positions, provided the results to staff through presentations that were also recorded and made available on our Insight web intranet for anyone that was unable to attend in person. And staff have been given an opportunity, if they have questions or concerns about the results of their evaluation, to come back to the consultant and meet with them, with their manager, to have a look again to make sure there weren't factors missed in their responsibilities. And we've had so far 5 requests for reconsideration that have been reevaluated. Some have moved, some have not. You're gonna put me on camera. So that process is complete. The appeal process actually wraps up on Thursday this week. But we're pleased with the feedback that we've had through that from staff. It's been a fairly easy process. We've been able to have them meet with a consultant relatively quickly after they've let us know that they want to have that meeting. So we're happy with the outcome.
Great, thank you. Are there questions or comments from members? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, if you're having success, congratulations, because I've been through probably 6 or 7 job evaluation processes in my career, and none of them were very successful. All of them ended up with hardship and resentment. And I mean, I presume you've taken a position that nobody is going to go down in pay. Right? And that's usually where they all start. But I can tell you, giving somebody else a raise in pay is viewed exactly the same as getting a reduction in pay. So if you're making it work and you can make it work with your employees, and there's even in here within this organization, it was done a few years ago, and there were a lot of hard feelings came out of it. So if you've made it work, congratulations. So, but in your report, you say there's a $9,900 impact for 2022, presumably.
Correct.
Yeah, but that impact is lessened by the fact that we had unfilled vacancies, so there's not a direct impact on the budget. But presumably, then going forward with compounding rate increases, that's $10,000 or $12,000 a year going forward in additional wages. Is that what we can presume?
What it does when we see someone moving up a grade, we put them at the next highest step on the grade. And then what it means is they're going to be entitled to additional increases at that higher rate than where they would have capped out at step 5 of the job rate. They have a wider. Exactly.
All right. So they're even though the impact for 2022 is negligible, the going forward impact will be more significant.
Each year they'll take an additional step. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We'll prepare ourselves for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grace.
My question's been answered, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Are there further questions for the manager? Okay, thank you for this report and for your work on it. I think it is always a challenging thing to do these things, and our HR employees do an excellent job of managing these processes, and so we appreciate your work, Janice.
Thank you.
All right, so then we're on to our third and final information report, which is on the 4th Annual Economic Development Forum, and the Economic Development Officer is with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This information report serves to update Council on the table discussions held during the 4th Annual Economic Development Forum. I'd like to thank the economic development stakeholders, town staff, and members of Council that participated in this year's event. Many positive comments were received from participants about the opportunity to attend an event of this kind and to provide input and ideas on economic development in our community. I look forward to incorporating recommendations discussed during the forum into the Economic Development Work Plan for 2023, and the 5th Annual Economic Development Forum will be held in the fall of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments for the Economic Development Officer, Councillor Mayette?
Only one. Okay, thanks very much for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Heather. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend your forum this year. I have done in previous years. It's always a really informative and enjoyable experience. As I review the results of your economic forum, I'm pleased to see that there's a number of issues that dovetail quite nicely into something that I'm sure I know you're aware of, which is our Sparks Training Center, formerly known as the Launchpad 2 Training Center in Port Elgin. So the Sparks Training Center team has been working very hard, and I know at least one of our members was in attendance at your forum, and I'm sure his influence is seen in there, because it talks about training opportunities for young people, preparing people for future job growth, independent or privately run trades or skills training facilities. So this is all exactly what we're talking about with our Spark Center. So just a heads up to everybody listening that you'll be hearing more about the Sparks Training Center in the near future from our group. And we're looking for a really exciting 2023 to make that dream a reality. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. Are there further comments on this report? I don't see any, but thank you very much for your work on it, Heather. I also was not able to be there, unfortunately, this year, but you've got some great results for us and some good information to help the economic yourself and our team at the town do more to help serve our businesses in our community. So thank you for that work, and I promise I'll make it next year. All right. So that brings us to the end of the committee of the whole agenda, and we've got quite a bit of work left to do, but we'll do a lightning round of statements by members here. We'll start with the deputy mayor.
I'll pass on my opportunity tonight.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Long night, I'll pass.
Okay, Councillor Mayette.
Just a Merry Christmas to everybody and an enjoyable and safe holiday season.
Thank you. Councillor Duhane.
I'll pass.
Okay, Councillor Davinsky.
I'll pass.
All right, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief.
Okay, got
I
time.
had the pleasure of attending the Lessons in Carols service at the Southampton United Church last night. It's been a couple of years since we've been able to do that in person again, and it's a really very moving and wonderful event, which is interdenominational, and there were many members of the clergy who participated. The chantry singers provided Christmas music, and it was very well attended. And it's 3 donations which we're going to serve the Women's House serving Bruce and Grey County. So it was a wonderful event. Great to see it on again. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Halpin. Nothing? Okay, and Councillor Stack.
Good thing.
Okay, thank you. Well, and I just very briefly, because it's worth mentioning these people, the CFUW vigil, thanks to the CFUW, and also the radiothon put on by the Hospital Foundation, and John did a great job there, and so did the whole works of them raised. What was it? It was over $200,000. So thanks to them. It's been a very busy couple of weeks, but and I know all of you folks were at lots of those things, but there's just a couple of really great groups that I thought worth giving a shout out to tonight. So with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Huber. All in favor? Committee stands adjourned, and we will reconvene at council at 8:45. Okay, I think we're ready to get started here with regular council. So I will call to order this regular council meeting, and we will bypass the land acknowledgement because we did that at committee of the whole. So we'll move on to disclosures of pecuniary interest and ask any member if you have a pecuniary interest to declare at this time. Councillor Davinsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of your bylaws will solidify the members of the Southampton BIA Board of Management. And since I'm being appointed to that through that bylaw, I will leave the room.
Okay. Are there any other disclosure of pecuniary interest at this time? Seeing none, of course, you can declare at any time if you need to. We have no additions or deletions or amendments to the agenda. We have no public meetings, so we're on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meetings of October 11th, 2022, November 14, 2022, November 22nd, 2022, November 28, 2022, and November 29, 2022, and the planning committee meeting minutes of November 21, 2022, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of November 28, 2022, as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Mayette. and Davinsky. Any questions or comments to any of those sets of minutes? We'll start with Councillor Grace and then come to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think probably the clerk has made this change, but I'm listed as being present for the November 28th council meeting, and I was in fact absent.
Okay, so we'll make that minor amendment. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question for future consideration. The October the 11th minutes have a bylaw that relates to the lease agreement with for the CCD site. I believe it would be appropriate to now follow up with appropriate inclusions in our zoning mapping, which draws the lines appropriately and defines the space with the special conditions attached to it. So it would be similar to other open space zoning areas that have been subdivided or in some way altered so that one section enables specific kinds of activities. I'm thinking of what happened in the Meadow Creek subdivision, where a large open space swath was divided in half so that one half could have a fitness club on it. I think in the interest of public transparency that the zoning map should be effectively drawn over the next period of time so that the mapping reflects that this site is being labeled as surplus for the purposes of this lease, and that there are some things that are enabled for that particular site that don't apply to the rest of the OS-1 site. So just to do another housekeeping step to make sure that the mapping matches what has happened here. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Staff has noted those comments. Are there further comments to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, now we're going to move on to reports of municipal officers and committees. And the first one there is a striking report on the proposed 2023 council calendar. And there's a recommendation that council accept the proposed 2023 council meeting calendar. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Davinsky. Any questions or comments? The Deputy Mayor.
It's just a comment. I remember at the striking committee meeting, we did very specifically make a comment that the opportunity still would exist if necessary to call a second meeting in either July or August. So I just wanted to have that be reflected in the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good note, and that was topic of conversation, and members of council should always be aware that special meetings can be held at the call of the chair and may need to be called from time to time. Are there any other comments? Councillor Stack.
Yeah, just a comment about the schedule for four full business days for financial planning in 2023. I assume it's for 2023 and 2024. It looks like they're in. Just a note, like I recognize we have staff that have to attend, but given that we are a council that has both full-time employed, part-time employed, and retired council members, and in the interest of ensuring that future opportunities for those who may be younger and still employed, we may want to look at opportunities for doing those, at least some of those sessions after ordinary business hours, just to make it easier for full-time employed personnel to make those meetings.
Yeah, it's a good note, and I think each council has to be flexible and determine what works best for the members. So I think as we head toward those dates toward the end of 2023, I think we can look at what works best for timing, and even in the year, the ones the budget meetings coming up at the beginning of the year, and see if there's ways that we can accommodate all members. So we certainly want to do that. And this is an unusual year with these four. Most years you'd only have those two dates, and they would be in the fall sometime. So are there further comments? Duly noted, and thanks for raising that, Councillor Stack. If there's nothing further, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, and then we'll move on to the staff report on the MSDR implementation for the Public Works Supervisor, and there's resolution. The council approved the organizational structure change to collapse the vacant Operator 3 and Public Works summer student positions to support a restructuring to create the additional Public Works Supervisor position. Is there a mover and seconder for the resolution? Councillor Stack, Councillor Grace. Questions or comments to the resolution? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I read this and on the surface, I'm going to try and summarize what it says to me is that we couldn't fill a vacancy for the operator 3 for the last year and a half or so. It just, the labor market is such that it's difficult to do. And so we're down an operator. So we're going to take the money that we would have spent on an operator and the summer student and combine that together to make another supervisor. But presumably that supervisor will also come out of the ranks of the, if we internally, if we are successful in hopefully internally selecting somebody to that job. And that'll create another less person. So you'd be down 2 operators or 2 workers, for instance, whether it's an operator 3 or whether it's somebody else. Are we not creating a situation where it's getting harder and harder for those folks on the front line to get all their work done by adding more supervisors and having less workers? It just, maybe it's my old union self coming out in me, but it just seems counterintuitive to have more bosses and less workers and create a situation whereby we're creating, more vacancies that we can't fill.
We can look for a comment from the Director of Community Services Operations.
Thank you, and thank you for the question and through you, Mr. Mayor. The ratio of supervisors to workers definitely is not where there's more workers than there is supervisors for sure. The gap at the middle management level has been recognized for some time, and it was a recommendation through the Municipal Service Delivery Review. What the recommendation in that review stated was that that we would reprofile the lead hand position. We recognize that lead hand position as being critical in our operations as well. What the vacancy of the operator 3, which been vacant for about 9 months, what that allows us to do is to fill a gap where we have a gap right now because we have had problems recruiting for that operator 3. What council will see through the 2023 budget deliberations, and similar to a report I brought forward in the summertime as well, is a creative way to try and increase our, strengthen our recruitment, but increase the number of applicants that we are getting for some of these positions, because we are struggling. The struggling is real at the HR level for us to fill some of these positions. So what council will see is the collapse of a few positions, one on the public works side and one on the community services side as well, and one of them being an operator 3 in the public works division. If that position is approved through the 2023 budget, then that would bring that complement back up to where we are. Where we are now.
You're going to delete one and then add one in the upcoming budget.
We can turn it over to the CAO.
And maybe, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe to help with some clarity, I think the director was highlighting that we're making this move in order to keep the lead hand position, the union position. So it is a filled position that we have in the division right now. And so we are recommending collapsing that operator position in order to address the staffing shortage. We're keeping the lead hand, creating the supervisor position as was recommended through the Municipal Service Delivery Review. Then the other piece that the director spoke to was that we saw in the Service Delivery Review the numbers especially in community services and operations that we have in our temporary employees in comparison to other municipalities with their permanent complement. So what the director is saying is that there'll be a report back to council through the budget that starts to look at how we can potentially look at creating a transition between our temporary to our full-time, that full-time being more attractive as a recruitment option for folks. So that's what you're seeing in this recommendation tonight as well. Those temporary summer positions, we're unable to fill them for the last 2 summers. There's a way that's being put forward to council tonight that turns that into that full-time position, which is a lot more palatable in the marketplace.
Okay, well, I think I understand, and good luck. I can see where, having seasonal employees, whether it's summer seasonal or winter seasonal, is less desirable and harder to fill. And if that's the rationale going forward, I look forward to hearing that in the upcoming budget. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there further comments from members? Seeing none, the resolution's been moved and seconded, so all in favor? That is carried. Okay. Now we're on to report number 3, which is a staff report on the revised code of conduct for council and local boards. We'll turn that over to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. It is required for every council in the province of Ontario to have a code of conduct for our council and local boards. The one being provided is an update to the existing code. This has been updated by the town's integrity commissioner, Eric Bareilles. It is not uncommon for an integrity commissioner to either prepare or be heavily involved in the drafting of such a document, as they are considered the subject matter expert. In addition to the updates provided, this code of conduct provides gifting limit that provide additional clarity and certainty on the matter, spells out the need for confidentiality, not just in closed public meetings, but in any confidential information a member or local board may be privy to during their term. Council may also note that there are separate inquiry processes provided for the policy, provided in the policy for complaints relative to code of conduct versus complaints relative to the Conflict of Interest Act. And you will notice on your desk this evening you received a handbook on the municipal conflict of interest for your information. Local boards, including all committees of council, but not committees in the community who have a council representative, but no other council appointed members such as the Chambers of Commerce, are included as a local board. So for greater certainty, this is the Committee of Adjustment, Municipal Heritage Committee, the Airport Committee, Accessibility Advisory Committee, and both BIAs that will be included in this code of conduct going forward. These are bodies where both citizen and council members have been appointed by council. Police service boards are covered under separate legislation and in a different appeal body. The clerks within Bruce County who have retained the services of Aaron Bareilles have received the same code of conduct and will be provided to their councils for consideration. Having an identical or substantially similar code of conduct across municipal boundaries provides consistency between upper tier and lower tier municipalities and for residents who may own multiple properties across the county. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. So there is a resolution that the code of conduct for council and local board policy be endorsed. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Stack. Are there questions or comments? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. It's great that local boards are getting into the code of conduct now. There was a reference in the middle of the code that says that it also, members are also bound by the municipality council and staff relations policy. Do we need to change that policy to reflect local boards, or is it automatic that now they're in there too? Which would also be another clarity thing to get to.
Certainly through you, Mayor Charbonneau, by way of adopting this policy through a bylaw, excuse me, through a bylaw, they are automatically held to the to follow that policy and every policy within the municipality. That update is going to be coming shortly. It has not been provided this evening. However, it is, shall we say, on the list for updates that will be coming before council in the coming month. Thank you.
Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I have a question with regards to section 17, which is penalties for non-compliance with the code of conduct. And we've fortunately not had to go down that road here as long as I've been here, but I've seen it happen in other municipalities. And it says, and I wonder if this is different than what's the current practice, because it says you'll be potentially suspension of remuneration paid to the member in respect to his or her services for a period of up to 90 days. So you can be suspended from pay. Does that mean you're suspended from sitting at the council as well, or do you have to still show up and just not get paid? Like representation without compensation, I think.
It's essentially yes. However, if I may, so as a member of council or local board, most local boards are not paid. However, yes, you could have your remuneration suspended to go for the full 90 days. Is that being the recommendation? That's usually reserved for either a repeated offense. In my experience, I can't say for sure, but in general. So yes, technically, you should still be attending. If, say, for those full 90 days, you say, I'm not going to attend, that sort of falls down into another section of the act that says you haven't attended for 3 months. Now your seat is automatically vacant. So as a counselor, if you have had that penalty put upon you, you have to weigh the pros and cons of whether or not you're going to attend, even though you're not being paid.
Understand that part about 3 months in vacancy, and as you pointed out, 3 months would be for egregious or repeated violations that, you know, are presumably a trip or a misplaced comment or something might get you a month. And this, in the cases that I've seen, month seems to be the first strike, in which case if you didn't show up for a month, you wouldn't be vacating your seat, but you'd be, I guess, you'd be having your own protest to the, presumably that you don't agree with the penalty. So anyway, is this a new thing? Is that what I'm after? Is this new, or is this directly cut and pasted sort of from the previous code? It is, okay. Very good.
Mayor Charbonneau. It is not new. Again, in my experience, that is something that has been around for a little while. I can't say for how long exactly, but that is part of the act, that it cannot be longer than the 90 days. So but it has been in place certainly for a number of years. I don't want to say for sure from the beginning of codes of conduct, but certainly for several years.
Thank you. Are there further comments or questions? So yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the work of the clerk on putting this together. I agree with the deputy mayor, and it's very much time that we included our local boards and committees in the code of conduct. I think that's absolutely necessary, and certainly a matter of a requirement for council that we have it in place. And so this is an important step and of us enacting some legislation thing we need to do. So I do appreciate the clerk's work on it. So there's nothing further, then I'll ask all in favor of the resolution. That's carried. Very good. Okay, so now we're on to the fourth staff report, which is about the new community emergency management plan, and we'll turn it over to the fire chief, and in this case, the community emergency management coordinator.
Thank you, your worship, and to members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. I need a bigger table. Thank you. The report that you have in front of you is a comprehensive look, deep dive actually, into the provincial IMS system, where Saugeen Shores is, based on that system, and a decision that was made to mirror or mimic the provincial system and that of Bruce County to some extent, but mainly the provincial nuclear emergency response plan and Bruce Power's emergency response plan. So along with discussions with and visitations to our neighbors, Kincardine, the plan was changed and presented to a committee, the program committee, along with the emergency response group. And out of that, we made a presentation. Some changes were made to it, and the what you have before you is the changes that were made and the recommendations to withdraw the present plan and the bylaw that is with it and bring the new plan forward, in which we will start training and exercising too. I'm excited about this, and it involved a lot of individuals in our town, especially staff, on how we were going to get here. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. So there is a resolution that council accept this report as the annual emergency management report from the Community Emergency Management Coordinator. The council approve the Community Emergency Management Committee positions as described in the plan, and the council pass a bylaw adopting the new Community Emergency Management Plan as approved by the Community Emergency Management Committee and repeal bylaw 57-2018. Is there a mover and seconder? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Grace. Questions or comments? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thanks very much for the report, Ed. And it makes a lot of sense that we would move to be in line with the province and the nuclear emergency response plan. My question is, why are we just doing it now? Like, what was the rationale that we would have a plan that was not in alignment with the province or not in alignment with the provincial and Bruce Power nuclear emergency response plans? And the second question, I'll just throw it out there, is there a impact on your staff or your budget to go to this new plan?
Through you, your worship, to the councillor, very good questions, and I'll try to be as tactful as I possibly can. We, as a second tier municipality to a first tier county, in this case, we're supposed to mirror or piggyback Bruce County's emergency management plan. It is a little behind. It doesn't necessarily follow this. So I don't know if the past was to wait to see if something was going to happen in Bruce County. But there is a new CMC there, and we're excited in assisting them on getting with us, and they are part of meetings that we've had with our neighboring municipalities and Bruce Power on moving forward. So I would say that's the reason. The second question, your second question, I don't believe that there's any financial impact. We're using the same methodology as far as resources, people, etc. It's just a different take on how we're going to do what we're going to do.
The Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, and through you, I just wanted to compliment you on the initial training session that occurred. It was I'd been through a couple in the past, and this one by far was the most energetic, first of all. But second of all, it definitely was presented in a way that it had a great deal of meaning. And, you know, the mayor wasn't able to be there, but those bags with the kit for the different titles in the plan, very effective in terms of bringing it home as to how it all could fit together in a room in the event of an emergency. I just wanted to commend you on the training and look forward to, you know, further sessions that take into account now that the pieces of the new plan, the revised plan, are coming together, and it's going to be great. So thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the chief. Ed, I read through the information, and it's a great plan. There's no doubt about that. A great plan. I don't know whether I've missed it, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of mention of the use of social media, which I believe would be the first place some people would go in an emergency to get information. Can you help me out here?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor, absolutely love to help. The plan speaks to what would happen in the event of an emergency. And if you were to look at a level 1 or level 2 for complete activation, under the EOC director, there is a spot for a communications person, which is the number 2 spot that would be filled after the EOC director. So the next layer in the plan, which is not part of the plan, is a checklist, a toolkit per se of let's say preconceived or templates that can be put out that deal with every eventuality. And the communication person has this toolkit and a checklist that deals with making sure that they cover everything. So all of these checklists and procedures and operational guidelines, et cetera, are for every position, not only the communication position, but absolutely, Councillor, the communication position is one of the most important. And the first step after the communications person is an assistant for that person that does nothing but monitor social media. So that's laid out, but it's laid out in other appendices and addendums, not the plan itself.
Okay.
Thank you. And just one other question. The deputy mayor mentioned this exercise that you went through and so on. Was this open to the public or was this private?
No, so that would have been a training session for the emergency operator or the emergency operation center, the EMC, the Emergency Management Committee, which is a routine thing that the chief is going to implement on an annual basis to ensure that not only are we trained well to handle these things, but that this plan gets updated. Normally I would have attended in my role as head of council. In this case, I wasn't available. I was at training at Bruce County, so the deputy mayor attended in my place.
No, it's a great idea. It just, I didn't know whether we were all going to get a shot at it. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further comments or questions? Having been in the unenviable position myself of having declared a municipal emergency, I know how critical this plan is. And I also know how critical it is that it's up to date and that it's aligned with provincial policy and that it's aligned with our partners and that everybody who has a role to play in it understands what they need to do intimately so that when the thing happens that none of us want to have happen, but does every now and again, some emergency occurs, that we all know what we're doing and we can do what we need to protect the people in the community. So you've done great work here, Chief, and you've set us up to be able to do that. And so much appreciated and excellent work. With that, we have the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, so then we're on to item 5, which is a staff report on pre-budget approvals. And I assume, who has this, Director of Corporate Services or the Treasurer? The Treasurer? The Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 2023 business plan is scheduled to be approved in March of 2023, and several capital projects require earlier initiation in order to prevent delays in design or construction, to meet operational requirements, or allow timely commencement of the procurement process. Therefore, pre-budget approval is being requested for those capital projects. The total being requested for pre-approval is 2.6 million from a variety of funding sources.
Okay, thank you. So there is a resolution. The council approved the capital projects listed in this report for up to $2,638,600 in pre-budget approval spending. Is there a mover and seconder? The Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grace. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daniel, I neglected to ask you this question. I added up the amount from this that is coming from taxation, and I got a little over 308,000. And I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know if you have this figure yet, if it's too early, but normally during budget deliberations, we have an amount, a dollar figure that's tied to the 1% of increase in the tax levy. Do you have a sense of what that dollar figure would be approximately yet? Is that too early?
No, we do have that figure, and the 1% increase in the municipal portion of the levy is approximately $192,000. In this case, on the capital side, when we're talking about capital purchases, there is a fixed amount of taxation that we set aside for capital purposes every year. Last year, that would have been roughly 1.8 million. So until we go over $1.8 million of taxation towards capital, there wouldn't necessarily be an increase associated with that.
Perhaps I'm misunderstanding, just to clarify the councilor's question, because maybe this is my misunderstanding. I don't see anything in here that comes directly from taxation. I see these fleet purchases that are taxation based, but the spending is coming from the fleet reserve, not directly from the tax levy, right? Is that, or am I misunderstanding?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, in this case, the dollars that are coming from the fleet reserve, which are the fleet reserve is funded from taxation to the tune of approximately $1 million a year. But that is part of the regular operating budget transfers. So again, that would be even outside of the 1.8 million of capital taxation that I was talking about, that there's $1 million of fleet reserve taxation built in as well.
So just to be perfectly clear for those listening, this does not necessarily, or does not mean that these are tax increasing measures. The fleet reserve transfer is a fixed number, and this doesn't affect that. The deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau. Two questions. This is probably for Director Schreider. The sidewalk machine, is it intended for Port Elgin or Southampton?
Thank you for the question, and through you, I believe the unit that's noted in there is a replacement unit.
Oh, a replacement, okay. And then the second question relates to the street reconstruction. It's mentioned that in the bullets, the project is for full reconstruction, including road, water, and sewer components. Is the intention by full reconstruction, is the intention to include sidewalks and curbs all the way up from Goderich up to Wellington on one side or both sides?
That might be best. There he is, the Director of Development Services. Maybe best to take that one. There he is, the Director.
Thank you for the question. It's you, Mayor Charbonneau. We do have Project Manager Colin Sanders on the call, and I believe he'll have that detail more readily than myself.
Everybody's here today.
Thank you. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to put my video on. I'm having a problem with the internet here, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me through this. To answer your question, yeah, it's a full street rebuild. So yeah, it includes water, sewer. When we do a whole street, there'll be curb, there'll be gutter, and there's sidewalk planned.
Thank you. Good to hear.
Okay. Anything further on these pre-budget approvals? Oh, Councilor Davinsky.
Just following up on a question from the deputy mayor. She asked if the sidewalk machine was for Port Elgin or Southampton. And you indicated, Kristen Schreider indicated that it's a replacement piece of equipment. And still, I would ask the question for Port Elgin or Southampton or both.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I can get back to you tomorrow on the specific details.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? No? Okay, and just a note that this is a pretty unusual circumstance to see this kind of pre-budget approval spending for new members of council in particular. This is really only arising because of the extreme delay in the budgeting process, and we wouldn't normally see this happen, but it's a great thing to do, and it shows our staff being proactive to make sure that we get good prices on some of this work and that we actually get it done. So you've heard the resolution, and I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Okay, and so now we're on to the sixth report, a staff report on the 2023 economic adjustment for employee pay grids and the manager of human resources.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report introduces our recommendation that is derived out after consulting with our local comparator municipalities to determine the average rate of economic adjustment being proposed for 2023. Some of you will recall that in the fall of 2021, we implemented an updated pay grid that was a result of extensive market comparative work that we did with other municipalities, and we found that we had fallen quite far behind market, and there was quite a significant increase required to achieve those municipally competitive rates. So this recommendation, based on the average of our local comparators, is intended to maintain that competitive position and to make sure that that new grid stays competitive. And it's particularly important at this time as we're having some struggles competing with other municipalities for limited pools of municipal talent, in particular for unique positions to the municipal sector. So happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you. So there is a resolution. The council approved the recommended economic adjustment of 3.56% to the town pay grids effective January 2nd, 2023 in advance of the approval of the 2023 operating budget. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Grace. Questions or comments? Councillor Stack.
So great to see that we're adjusting rates based on what we're seeing in the marketplace. So, you know, I just encourage us to continue to review and see if this helps us with recruitment, because I know that I think depending on your measures of CPI, in 2023, we're going to see anywhere from 5.1 to 6.5%. So obviously that's going to challenge the cost of living for our employees. So I think this is great. I really commend the team for taking that initiative and just encourage us to continue to review as we continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, the recommendations are moved and seconded. So all in favor? It's carried. Okay, and then I think we're on to the last one of these, a staff report on appointments to the Southampton Business Improvement Area Board, and I have a resolution. Actually, Councilor Davinsky. That's all right. You may as well just stay out. All right, get out of here. All right, now we have a resolution here that the board members as submitted by the Southampton Business Improvement Area be approved for the 2022 to 2026 term. Is there a mover and seconder? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, let's bring Councillor Davinsky back. Come on in, John. Okay, so we are on to bylaws, and there are 3 bylaws there for consideration. Does any member wish to consider any of the bylaws individually? Seeing no request for that, then I have a resolution that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of December 2022. 1/99/2022 being a bylaw to establish the code of conduct for council and local boards and rescind bylaw 59/2017. 2/100/2022 being a bylaw to set fees and charges for the provision of services or activities for the town of Saugeen Shores. And 3/101/2022 being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program and emergency plan governing the provision of necessary services during an emergency and to repeal bylaw 57/2018. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duhaime. Questions or comments to the bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, and then I have a resolution that council move into close to public session to discuss matters in accordance with Municipal Act 2001, Section 239(1)(2)(a), the security of the property of municipality or local board. John, can we so I'll just report to the public that the general nature is to receive the hazard identification and risk assessment. And so I will ask for mover and seconder. Moved by Stack, seconded by Huber. All in favor? That is carried. Council will move into closed session now, and I guess we'll be heading to a different Zoom link to do that. Okay, thank you. Then the council has arisen from close to public, and I can confirm that we did pass a set of minutes. We passed the minutes of we passed the close to public council meeting minutes of September 26th, November 14th, November 22nd, November 29th, 2022, and the close to public committee of the whole meeting of November 28th, 2022 were adopted. And also that we received information on the hazard identification and risk assessment. And so with that, we'll move on to item 12, which is the confirmatory bylaw, and that is bylaw 102, 2022. And have a resolution that bylaw 102, 2022, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read the first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of December, 2022. Mover and seconder, Stack and Grace. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, I have a resolution of this regular council meeting of December 12th, 2022, hereby adjourns at 9:52 PM. Mover and seconder, Huber Davinsky. All in favor? The committee stands adjourned, or council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody, and have a safe trip home, bud. We'll see you later.